is the kitty going to join the stream too?
Meow.
I think so, doesn't he?
Happy Sunday, everybody. We have a cat on stream. It's official. It's Officer Chat. This is episode 13. And we wanted to get together and talk about the Sanctum of Domination. I called it a retrospective. I guess we're not technically done with it yet, so maybe it's a premature retrospective. I don't know if that's a thing. Claiming it, though.
I really feel like last Sunday should have been a kill, so I'm okay just calling it the first kill.
Oh, it just never mind about heroic progression at all. Just
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
and we
sure.
just also don't have the achievement.
Right,
We had the kill, but we were so close that
or the gear.
they should just give it to us.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I mean, none of us want to progress on Fate Scribe, so it's okay, right?
Yep. Call it good. This was a good tier, guys. Well done.
See you all next time. It'll be out any day now.
We got everybody here today, which is a very pleasant surprise. I wasn't sure we'd get all 5 of us together again. Ever
Okay,
again.
not ever.
That's ominous. Something you want to tell us?
No. It
we're
feels
good. Everything's good.
weird to ask all of you to participate in Officer Chat, but like for my personal enjoyment, this is the best way to do it. So I'm always psyched when we can get all 5 of us together.
I completely agree that it's weird to have an officer chat without all of our officers.
Mhm.
Or with all of our officers, sorry. Damn it, I jacked that joke up.
It's fine. You can always blame me. I'm only here like half the Sundays anyway.
That's why it's more special when you are. Let's start off with our initial predictions from last time. I guess I was wrong. Although I agree with Destiny's consoling counterpoint that if we had time, if the run back wasn't 6 goddamn minutes per wipe, we could have had 2 or even a third pull on Sylvanas, and I think that's all we needed that night. We were at 54%, 53 and change. That's essentially 4% shy of a boss kill. I don't want to be the guy that says I'm counting it, but
Without Vantis runes. If we had
Right.
Vantis runes, that would have been a kill for sure on the first pull, probably, because even the first pull was much closer, I think, than any of us expected we'd get.
it really was. And like if we had even 40 minutes where there was enough for me to be like 3 or 4 pulls, sure, let's rune up. But like we had 12 minutes. We went over our allotted raid time. And for one pull, it wasn't worth pulling the trigger on runes. If I had known we were only going to be 3.5% off, I definitely would have done that. But yeah,
I will say on the topic of those, we got 2 pulls. The first pull was one of the most fun experiences I've had playing WoW, because you like explained the first phase, which was complicated but not too bad, and then we collectively as a guild managed to one-shot that first phase, and then we were just like, well, now we're on a giant chain. Let's see what happens. And that was it was just like, there's a thing, it's casting. We better stop it.
Yep.
Let's go.
I like it best when we kind of, I don't want to say fumble, because we actually did really well, but when we just experiment, go in blind, so to speak.
It seems to only work for our group on the really long boss pulls, because when you try to, wing it, as it were, and not go over strats before short boss pulls,
Yep.
it never goes well. Like, we get one shot by the big mechanic that's
Yep.
supposed to get interrupted or something.
My favorite was Zell's comment in Discord the day after. He was reminding me of our very first Danny kill,
Yeah, that was hilarious.
where I did the same thing. I'm only going to teach you guys. We're going to be here for weeks, guys. This is an impossible fight. We're going to go step by step. I'm only going to tell you the first 1 step of the 10-step process, and I'm like, on step 9, oh my god, we're going to do it. And then at the end, just, can I still just tell you the thing, though?
Now that we've done it, let me explain to you what just happened.
I've got my whole spiel ready. Oh, man.
But my notes.
Yeah, but my notes. So, yeah, off a little bit on timing on our guess, but really not that far off. Like I said, I think if we had even just one more pull, just the difference of having a shorter run back, I think would have been all that we really needed. So I'm gonna bush banner it and say mission accomplished. We definitely got that one in time.
It is really nice that the Sylvanas run back is not a run back.
Yeah, that's true.
Same as like
Yeah.
Danny.
Those other ones were brutal.
Actually, and I guess the same was true for N'Zoth too. Like those end bosses, they just plop you right back at the boss. You can mount.
Yep.
They know you're going to be there a while.
Well, yeah, I think that's it, right? Okay, so you can either have a 5-minute boss fight and a 6-minute run back, or you can have a 13-minute boss fight. You guys pick.
I'll take 13-minute boss fights.
Oh, for sure. Especially with scene changes like that. The Sylvanas fight is just so cinematic. Like, I don't even feel bad about wiping because it's like I want to do the chain thing again. I love that part.
You love it now.
Right. I mean, talk to me in 70 wipes, but
We won't have to. We'll just play this back to you.
Yeah.
that is the beauty of it being recorded for posterity.
I'll show you how to highlight it so this one won't go away.
Nice. So yeah, that was. I think. Do you think it impacts Trollin's called shot of ahead of the curve on August 29th? I kind of don't think it does.
I think that's pretty aggressive either way. So
I think it's really aggressive. I'd like to think that we get there, but that's only that's a month away, and that's how many raid nights? That's 8 raid nights, and we haven't even stepped foot into heroic yet.
I think it depends entirely on how much Fate Scribe and Painsmith become roadblocks for us.
yeah.
Because I mean, like, there's a world where
That's
tonight
true.
we go into heroic after getting normal Sylvanas down. Like, there's a chance we see some heroic bosses tonight. And if we can carry those lessons forward with Fate Scribe, and if we can figure out Painsmith quickly, I don't think his timetable is that wrong. Now, if we do have those 60 pulls on Painsmith and 80 pulls on Fate Scribe, like I think is possible at least, then yeah, we're 6 weeks out, 7 weeks out from AOTC. But if we can manage to get a good lockout,
I really hope we do get it in at that point. Like, something about the last raid, it felt like it took us a long time to push through a couple of barriers, and like the first Denathrius kill was like it took a lot out of us. I'm really hoping that these fights are complicated, but I don't think they're going to be grueling. I think that it will, and among other things, like you have a bullet point coming up that I don't want to spoil, but I really, even the complicated, difficult fights are super cool and super fun. Like, I don't feel like I'm just grinding my face on a cheese grater like I was on Denathrius. And so, like, even if we are having a hard time, I feel like this is a raid that we will likely continue raiding and won't have the same steep cliff off after the last raid once we got AOTC and everyone was just like, screw this, I'm never coming back.
yeah, I agree.
Do we know how the skip works?
I don't know where it happens. We got our first set of runes for it, so everybody should be 1 of 4 from last week. I don't know where it's going to take you, though.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get there. But like, if we can skip Fate Scribe,
That would
that'll
be
be
the best,
nice.
yeah. Well, though, like, the optimistic appraisal, too, is the DPS check is Guardian. But what I like so much about that fight is that, like, we have some valves, some levers that we can pull. Like, if we want to throw an extra healer at it, we might be able to take a third explosion each time. And that gives us, an extra 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds over the course of the entire fight. So I like that model a lot better. That plays more to our strengths, where we are just a bigger hammer guild, and so if we can brute force something by buying us a few extra minutes or a few extra seconds of DPS time, I like that way better than the sludge fist model of just, here is the mathematic DPS that you have to have, or it's game over. I like when we can create wiggle room.
Yeah.
And a chance for me to solo more raid bosses is always great.
Anytime my name is the last of the list of the healer cooldown rotations, anytime I can have Spirit Link Totem for it's about to enrage. Cool. We all have 1 health pool. Everyone's staying in this thing.
Yep.
We're gonna take a couple hits.
I'd like that a lot, yeah. All right, well, I'm going to get us back on track because somebody's not helping me organize my thoughts.
I'm helping you disorganize them. Does
Oh,
that
yes.
count?
I didn't want to interrupt you.
No,
You're on a roll.
I'm a raconteur. I will talk all day about nonsense. And then no one will
know.
watch. So, in review of Sanctum of Domination Normal, the first question I wanted to ask everybody was, do we like it?
Seems like there's a lot of trash. I don't dislike most of it. Like Fate Scribe I actually dislike that boss, but it's a cool boss. I just don't like fighting it. But every other boss is like, there's very little that I dislike about it. I wouldn't say that there's any bosses that are like, oh, this is really cool. But I like that I don't hate it.
Yeah, fair enough.
I really
Rob,
like. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead, Zeb. Jump, please.
I really like the mechanics. There's a lot of mechanics in this raid where we kind of all collectively have to do something, or the vast majority of us have to do something. And I think that it's hard to coordinate, but I think that when everybody is paying attention, that we are just more successful. So fights like, you know, the Soul Render guy that has the quadrant, so we all have to move around or whatever, like that kind of stuff is, or the 9 when we're all dodging all at the same time, and to a lesser extent the, you know, Fate Scribe where like a third of us or whatever are having to deal with these runes. Like I like when it's more than just, okay, you are the one person, and if you fuck this up, it's over.
Yeah.
Like I would prefer to, even if it's 7 of them and one of them can screw it up and it's over. Like I still think that's like, there's something more communal about those kinds of mechanics that I really enjoy. There's a lot of that in this raid.
Yeah, but we always say
Yeah, I
we
love
succeed or
heroic.
fail as a team. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I like the mechanics where we can help each other and it's meaningful, right?
for sure.
The singular mechanics of, yeah, you screw this up and we wipe really sucks.
It's tough, like from a control perspective. Like Rob was just alluding to, the heroic version of Fate Scribe, where the people who get to play that game will be randomly determined. So like that is fun, and I actually think that that's like whimsical in a way. Like that is fun by itself. If it was outside of a boss fight, that would be especially fun. You add in all of the other things that are happening in that fight, though, and for me, like as a raid leader, that makes that particular fight less fun. I would much rather be able to pick and just say, the 6 of you, the most mobile DPS, the most people who are comfortable with it, you guys will solve this puzzle for me. Meanwhile, the less mobile DPS who need to pump damage, or who are just, you know, they do not want the extra burden of responsibility, can say, no thank you, I would rather not do that right now. Like just from an organizational perspective, works better for me. Our guild tends to struggle with this is a complicated task during a stretchful situation, and it's going to randomly be assigned to people, is tough. I go back to, what's his bucket in the mech suit from Dazara Lore.
Mechaturk.
Yeah,
That's
thank you,
exactly where my brain goes with it too.
yeah, where it's communication heavy, and it involves people who don't, like, we have 10 or 12 really solid, like very vocal leader type people who are skilled at the game and are very comfortable taking any of the extra jobs, and that's great. And I think we have just as many people who would be very happy if we never asked them to interrupt anything or take an orb anywhere or stand in any circle. and I think that's fine. There's room for both, you know, types of players in WoW to have a ton of fun, but it just sucks. Well, it doesn't suck. I think it's a neat encounter design. I just, for our group, I feel a little uncomfortable being like, okay, that shitty job that you were dreading to do is likely going to happen to you now. Good luck. Because if you fail, you're disappointing everyone.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's a fun mechanic, but when we're in a guild where like we all sort of move at the speed of our slowest member and we don't, you know, prod them along, we only help them if they want it. Fights like that is always going to be really punishing for us. And I've more or less made my peace with it, but not just doesn't mean I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I think it's great. Like, it does force us to grow, and the big KSM push last tier, I think our group has leveled up. Like, I know we've said that in passing, we've said that privately to each other, but I don't know, like, if there's an actual quantifiable number attached to it, but I would say that our average skill level has gone up 3 points. Like, arbitrary number, I have no idea what that actually means in reference to any other thing, but we have gotten better as a guild.
Out of 1 million?
Right. Like, still progress, though. It's still a green arrow up. It's trending up. So yeah, I don't know. I like it. I don't love it, and I think Andrew summarized my point well by saying there's just a lot of trash and a lot of space. Like, if I could jump right into, you know, boss to boss to boss and only have like one little mini Terragru fight or like a couple little giant soul rending guys that kick me off the platform from not paying attention, fine. Like, there has to be trash, I get that. But when it's like you run 100 yards between each of the 17 trash pools between you and the next boss, when it takes 20 minutes to clear to the Terragru, I don't know. I don't love that. Which is a shame, because I like, this is going to be heresy, I like some of these fights more than I liked Castle Nathria. There are some of these bosses that I think are just way more engaging, that I'm having a lot more fun tanking. But it just, like, as much as I love it, just that trash slog kind of just kills it for me in between. Like, I leave the fight going, that was amazing, I love this fight so much, what's the next one? 20 minutes of trash. Fuck. So, I don't know. Rob, you were a huge Castle Nathria proponent. We talked about it stacking up seeing normal Sanctum now in its entirety, does it change your opinion at all? Are we close to or is Sanctum close to Castle, or are we still really far off?
I'm still a big fan of Nathria over Sanctum. It was like vastly superior to me in like just about every way possible.
There are just
Like
fewer vampires here.
Yeah, like I am all for the suck boys, as the memes go. But I don't know. I'm tired of the Maw. Its color palette is uninspiring. It's all like the same theme, and because a lot of it is based off of stuff that we saw in Wrath, it reminds me way too much of Wrath dungeons in a way that, like, I'm over the callback. I'm over the like nostalgia to it. Now I'm just kind of bored of it.
Yeah,
and I realize this is a very personal opinion, and I'm not expecting this to be like a big thing. I wouldn't even like hold it against Blizzard. I'm a really big fan of their encounter design team and their art design team, and I'm not saying they've like let any of us down, but I think what they were told to do is not for me.
Yeah.
On the plus side, I think that now that there's a raid in the Maw, this is probably the end.
Oh yeah.
Like whatever's next, this is the Maw is over. We're all over it. Korthia, the poor people in Korthia will just sit there and be tormented by rares forever after
Heroes.
9.15 or whatever. But yeah, I agree on that aspect of it. Is the Maw I didn't like the Maw. We talked about this leading into the 9.1. This the fact that we got more Maw was not something I was looking forward to.
Maw.
So I too am glad to see it get its climax and move on.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation that Rob just made, and I'm thinking about it now. And maybe that is like where some of the sensory fatigue is coming from, is that it like all of the architecture is the end of Lich King. It is Icecrown Citadel. It is what were those 3 dungeons just before Icecrown that were like in 3 parts with the Lich King chasing after you. You're right. Like this is all of that. This is the same armor sets. This is the same architecture. It's the same color palette. So maybe that is where some of it seems both familiar and like, I don't want to say boring because that's not fair, but just a little bit like a little samey. That's maybe exactly why I feel that way.
I think they probably could have made the raid a little bit shorter. Like this
they
tier,
could have added shortcuts for sure.
Yeah, well, like this tier in BFA had the mini raid and a shorter raid, if I remember correctly. And same thing with Legion. So this one like could have been 7 bosses, and I think it could have been fine.
Yeah, I think that I don't want to say that they've lost that sense of like letting something be grand because it's grand and not just big. Like, yeah, I agree. We could have had a 5 or a 6 boss encounter, and you could have sold it. It could have been epic, but somewhere along the line, like the philosophy has just become more is more. So if it just takes up more real estate, it's better, and if it has 10 bosses, it's better. I don't know. For loot acquisition, I like it. There's a chance I get a piece every week now instead of with only 6 bosses. I might go a whole week and never see a piece of gear. Yeah. So.
And I think, like, kind of agreeing with Rob, Nathria just felt so much more thematic, and almost all of the bosses had like theme associated with the story and the raid itself. Like you're seeing Sludgefist around, you're seeing the bosses, you interacted with the bosses through the story a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And their arenas, right? The rooms that you fought them in were all very different, that were all very themed, or a lot of them were very themed to what you fought there.
Oh yeah, this raid is very much like the Dungeon Master's like final boss fight, where I get to be like, oh, remember that guy you guys fought when you were level 6? And everybody goes, oh, not really. Who is this?
So on this subject, Dax in comments says, why does Ner'zhul feel like such a filler boss? If you were to pick the filler boss for this raid, which one would you pick as the filler?
Yeah, Remnant is a filler for sure.
Yeah,
I think Soul Render is a filler.
The 9.
Like that's at least got some story thread attached to it, which I can kind of appreciate. But like
the 9, like they had an opportunity with the 9
to give me 9 bosses.
Well, no, like it's more about you have this entire history of Sylvanas' like origin, right, wrapped up with the 9. They could have made the 9 almost its own mini raid, like 2 or 3 boss mini raid,
Yeah.
and go take out and just make a whole huge story arc about how we're going to go take out the 9. Like that was story like gold that they just
Left on
stuff.
the table.
They stuffed it into a boss fight with no exposition. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind
And
of
That's a
disappointing.
15-year-old tradition.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's why I think of it as filler, right? Like
Yeah.
it's something where it's just like you could tell that there could be more, but it feels like they just kind of phoned it in. It's like, all right, well, there's some angels that you're gonna fight, and we're gonna do all the lines that you've seen all before, and that's 9.
Mhm.
Well, it actually wasn't at 7 because we killed 2 of them in BFA.
Right. Well, everything floats down here.
That's
Yeah,
That's
like
true.
some of them are down here in their dead state, and that's why they supposedly don't interact with us as much during the boss fight, or something.
Mhm. You gotta love it when a rule set isn't even consistent within its own rules. Like,
But at the same time, this raid, that encounter in this raid came out. Tazavesh has an encounter that is designed exactly like I would want the 9 fight to be, where you like fight one boss till it's at 15%, and then the second one comes in, and now you have to deal with both of them, and then you kill the one, and some mechanic of that one is still floating around. Like they released the encounter that I feel like would be better suited for this kind of boss
yeah,
at the same time in a different dungeon.
yeah, unrelated. Here's a better encounter. Hope you don't compare these.
Yeah, I think I would have enjoyed something like that more. And like I like the Kel'Thuzad fight. I like it a lot. It's neat and like it's not unique, but it's neat. But I would have liked them to like switch their roles in the raid and have the 9 be the stuff you fight immediately before Sylvanas,
Yep.
and be able to give that the attention of a really complicated like second last boss fight, sort of like Stone Legion generals before it.
Yeah, I agree completely.
And like I would have been very happy. I also have some like issues with the lore and the theme about Kel'Thuzad being in there at all, and Sylvanas doing other than just like butchering him for fun.
Mhm.
So like it's doubly weird to me that he has such a prominent role there.
Yep.
I did like a lot what they did with the Terragru, where, hey, we fight him as a boss, and he's no longer in
Yeah.
Torghast. Yeah.
Korga. Like, that is a game-changing, a lore, like an impactful thing that you can do.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Yeah, and I think that was handled really well to like take him out from somewhere else, put him in here, and then get rid of him and tell everyone this is why he went away, and have some fun with it. Like the anime
Yeah.
powers on that are,
Exactly.
despite our like minor incidents, they're a hoot and a half.
Mhm.
Like they're just great, and I'm gonna look forward to doing that more or less for like the entire raid
Yep.
tier.
I don't want to
look
harp on
forward
it.
to us having enough stamina to be able to survive people taking whatever powers they want, just so we have a crazy raid with everyone in a bouncy
Yep.
castle, like just flying all over the place.
Promise it will happen. I don't want to harp on it too much, but like my one last thought is, we get this nice little subquest and lore regarding the Eye of the Jailer being Odin's lost eye, which is like, I love Norse mythology, so like it's like a little bit of yee moment for me. Plus, like it explains how it came to be and how the in-game Odin lost his eye. But like that gets more attention and more narrative background than the 9 did. Like everything that we know about them is from us playing other versions of the game, previous expansions, or external lore. I feel like if you hadn't played any expansion except this one, and you didn't read any of the Christie Golden novels or any of the atlases for the game, this is a meaningless throwaway fight for you. Like there's nothing in game from this expansion that teaches me who or what these are. So like I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, I'm done complaining about that. I love everything else.
I will say the thing that I love is I got to hear you say "go ee," and then knowing that the stream was on like a 15-second delay, I looked over and got
Nice.
to watch you go ee afterwards, and that was great.
I did the same thing.
Excellent. So let's move on. We talked a little bit about difficulty rating. I don't think we need to harp on that, but there are some bosses in Sanctum that just feel harder than others, even within the confines of just normal difficulty. I think we always have those, but comparing it to previous tiers that we've gotten AOTC in or that we've done together as a guild, does the disparity in difficulty seem greater to you guys? I feel like the difference between the easier bosses and the harder bosses in this raid seem broader, larger than they have been to me in the past. Like the easy bosses seem entirely face rollable, and the harder bosses are at weird points in the raid, and beasts seem way more punishing even on normal.
Yeah.
I think it's confirmation bias. I think like it was the same in all the previous tiers.
Well, one of the differences I noticed about this fight is that, or about this raid as opposed to just Castle Nathria, is that in Castle Nathria, all of the trash that led up to the boss was sort of training you how to deal with the encounter, at least some parts of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is basically completely omitted from this dungeon, from this raid, right? Like
Knockback, knockback.
Yeah.
Sorry, aside from the knockback mechanic, half the abilities in the raid knocked back at this point. So like
Yep.
that you can train me to know that I
Yep.
shouldn't dispel the thing by knocking me off a ledge during the Terror Group fight. Like
Yep.
that's not helping. That's not helpful. But like
No,
there's no like training wheels, right? It's just like you fight a bunch of garbage or a bunch of trash that is completely irrelevant, except that it's between you and the boss, and now you have to figure out how to fight the boss, and you have not learned anything. Which is something that I really missed, surprisingly, from the previous raid.
I think there's more. The mechanics checks in this raid feel more pronounced because they're much more black and white, like Paintsmith, right? Like you either stood in the spikes or you didn't, and if you did, you're dead. If you didn't, you're alive. And that mechanics check is so much more pronounced than, oh, I didn't run far enough away, or we didn't stack enough people, or we didn't get dispels off right away, like that type of thing, right? Like if you think about the frost debuffs on the 9, right? Like that is a mechanics check that will wipe us, but it doesn't feel that like a razor's edge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Painsmith is just pure, you stood in the wrong spot, you're dead.
Yeah. We don't
We're
have
gonna
to.
retry.
It's a complete fight of that and nothing but that.
Yeah, and nothing but like there's no DPS check on Painsmith at all, right? Like I think there's probably an enrage, but it's inconsequential.
I'm actually not sure there even is.
Same thing with with Guardian. Even like Fate Scribe was interesting because Fate Scribe feels like what you're talking about, where like we can do that fight well and still not make the enrage.
Yeah.
We have to actually play it well. Like that's a hard fight.
That's our Achilles heel, is where we have to remind everybody pull after pull after pull. Look, if we all just do this, if everybody is alive and everybody does 80th percentile of their best effort, we win. But there will be people who tried 100th and 10th percentile their best effort and they'll die. Or it's just one of those, like, it sucks to have to say, you have to glue your eyes open for 7.5 minutes. But that's it. Like, we make one mistake, and honestly, until we outgear this, we probably wipe at the enrage. But, like, I guess my only thought was, looking at two fights that are back-to-back, that I would consider them in the early half of the instance, you have Soul Render Dormazane right before Painsmith Raznal. And like those in my mind, they're right next to each other. They're directly adjacent. They're like Raznal is in my mind the end of the first half of the dungeon. Like it just the leap in difficulty. You could take 15 people and just sight unseen send them into Soul Render, and if they don't get it on the first pull, they get it in the second. Like just no questions asked, no explanation. Whereas I feel like Painsmith is a hurdle for many people, and it just seems weird that there's that big a jump in difficulty.
I don't know. It might be that I just have played a lot of board games, but something about the like chessboard layout of that fight, I feel like I have a very strong understanding of positioning, where I need to be, where we need to go, just because it feels like a board game.
Nice.
Yeah.
And thinking about it like that, I was like, okay, it's not as important. It is important for me to know where I'm sitting now, but it's more important for me to know where I'm going to stand 15 seconds from now. And so that I can time my abilities or whatever to make sure I have a window where I can move, not lose healing or DPS or whatever, and get to where I'm going to need to be in 15 seconds. And something about that, like this fight is so chaotic that you have to think that way. Mm-hmm. I like fall right into that like sweet spot of that's how my brain works. Like I'm always trying and so the fact that they've designed an encounter that caters to that, I think is super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, Painsmith is one of my favorite fights in the raid, and it's actually kind of like it seems chaotic, but like with the grid, there's one thing happening at any given time, and even the overlaps, you deal with one thing and one thing only, and that's it. And you get through that, and then you move on to the next thing, and you focus on that. And when you're done with that, you focus on the next thing. And I like that execution. It's very clear. All of like one of the most clear fights from a positional perspective. Like sometimes, oh, I thought I was out of that swirly, but I wasn't. Like no, if you hit, if you have chains, you're gonna hit somebody, and you're gonna know right now.
Yep.
And the like you have that circle, and that is it. You have the spikes, and they are in those squares. If you are standing on the edge of a square, like it's very clear and distinct, and
we don't have to go to the log and track debuffs. We know what happened. All right. I don't want to beat a dead horse with that. Let's move on to the loot situation here. We didn't get like classic set pieces like I had kind of hoped in the initial alpha beta of this. We get domination gems and domination sockets. Yeah, some of us do. How are we feeling about that as a borrowed power system?
I love it. I absolutely love it. I think it's great. I do. And it goes back to the giving you a longer legged progression through the raid. Nobody's going to be at max gem level. Nobody's going to have all of that stuff on day one, but over the course of a couple of months, everybody's going to get there, and it gives you that longer progression, similar to like what they did in, what was it, like I think Legion or whatever, or even on N'Zoth, right, with the corruption, where like your par for normal gear through the raid, how it's balanced, is based off of just normal gear. But then they give you this power up that you can continue dipping into over time if you keep playing. And I love that. I think that's a great system.
Corruption.
Well, there was, I think it was, what raid was it where they just started giving us 1% to everything every week? And they just boosted you, right? I can't remember what raid that was.
Did that start in, not Zuldazar, not the...
It was Legion.
Oh, yeah, it was. It was Antorus. Every week we got the extra %.
Like with the trinket?
No,
you got an
aura.
Like
global debuff.
Was it Ice Crown?
Well,
we have Ice Crown in comments.
Ice Crown definitely did that. Well, that was, I think, it debuffed everything in there. But I think Antorus also did just a morale, like essentially everybody gets 1% stacking, and I think it stacked it like Ice Crown up to 25 or 30.
Yeah. But it's kind of, it goes into that mentality where Blizzard came out and said that with Mythic bosses, they're not going to do special phases for Mythic bosses for core story content, because they wanted all of the story content to be accessible by everybody. And I think that type of system, like the objective of Blizzard is that every single person can clear the raid at, normal, probably even heroic, and give you the power structure to do that. And I think the domination sockets are a great, like, we're getting sets back. There's some agency there in how you use them. You have a lot of slots to choose from. You have the upgrade, which is going to take, weeks or months. For us, it'll take months to max all them out. And it gives you that thing to strive for and focus on and power up. And I love it.
In Raid, I 100% agree. I have like this old school hang up about, I like bigger numbers. I'm a bigger numbers guy. And I don't like that my borrowed power from this particular raid doesn't universally translate. That power doesn't follow me. I don't know how disruptive it would have been, but I would much rather have seen those set bonuses or whatever alternative borrow powered system exists to be applicable in Mythic Plus, to be applicable in the open world outside of the Maw, Torghast, and the raid.
So I sort of agree. I just, having lived through the era of corruption as a healer, where I don't have a big giant tornado that I can spit out of my face to kill everything in front of me, trying to do dailies when everyone else has just this passive ability that does 4,000 DPS, and I'm sitting here throwing lightning bolts at things. Like the scaling and being able to interact in the outside world was completely out of whack because everyone had all these ridiculous powers, right?
Interesting.
That's a great perspective. So we have a question in chat. What do you think about the domination sockets versus gear from the vault with Mythic Plus being higher eye level?
What we were just talking about, I think, a little bit, and the answer I think is just multiple gear sets. I think you're going to want your domination socketed gear at almost any item level as long as you get that set bonus for raid. And then I think if you're doing Mythic Plus or PvP or Battlegrounds or whatever, you'll just go with your highest eye level set or your best allocated stat set gear, which is probably going to be the higher eye level stuff. I don't know. I mean, I guess there's a world where it's both, but probably if you're doing keys, your vault's going to give you better stuff.
With PvP, I think they're also going back to the system where PvP gear increases its item level when you're in PvP situations. So that's its own separate thing, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But I don't want Mythic Plus and Raid to be its own separate thing. I understand that for some people it is, but I think more people are doing both than not. And I think people who aren't doing one are not at all inconsequential, their feelings matter. But they'll be just fine if they're not getting the whole toys out of the raid. So it makes me sad that the set bonus only works in there. I am glad, and I just wanted to mention that what the gems by themselves do in your gear, that still works in other environments, in Mythic Plus.
Yeah.
So it's just the set bonus you're missing out on. And yeah, the set bonus matters, but there is still some benefit from taking your raid gear into Mythic Plus. And it'll probably be a while till we all get enough loot out of our vaults to completely overwhelm that. But by the time we're at the end of the season and looking to help other people with KSM, that's definitely the life that I'm going to be living.
I think I know we've talked a lot about the difference in eye level, right? You get, was it 252 or something out of your vault? We're likely only ever going to see 239 socket gear, but that's a problem that we are creating ourselves. That question of the difference of which one you choose when we're doing Mythic Plus at a high mythic level. And getting that gear and focusing our time on getting our gear, that's our power progression. What the intended power progression for that is to do the Mythic Raid, get the 252 gear at with those sockets, and then it doesn't become a problem. So we only have that problem because we're an AOTC guild and we don't do Mythic Raid.
Yeah, we make part of the problem with ourselves, but I also don't think that the effort required for a Mythic guild is the same as the effort required to do what we do in Keystones. I
totally
don't think
agree.
I can hack it in a Mythic guild, but I can definitely hack the type of Keystones that we do. And that's something I'd like to see them address a little bit.
For sure.
Yeah, I like the pathway, right? Which kind of goes along with what I said before. I like that we can spend the next 3 months getting our vault gear and powering up over time in a format that works better for us. And I think that's great. And it comes with problems. We're not going to have everything that we want. And one of the problems with that is that we have to constantly balance the domination socket with our Mythic Plus gear. And I think that is a perfectly fine thing. I think that's okay. It as a game content driver, it is getting people to think about Mythic Raid more, and that's a good thing. Yeah. And we could just choose, we do, to not do Mythic Raid, and that is a positive gameplay decision. It's a positive group play decision, and I like it a lot.
Yep. So there you go, Dex. Probably start acquiring a second set of gear that you can just change in and out of. There will be a tipping point. I think, everybody's saying, the 1.5 bonus to all of your damage done as long as you've attacked a novel target in the last 20 seconds. That's going to be good for a long time. But I think there will eventually be an item level out of that Great Vault that, if you don't have if it's only the 226 version or if it's only the 239 version, you may one day outgrow that. And like Andrew's saying, that's fine. That's expected. That's a problem we're doing to ourselves. And probably just keep 2 sets. One for Raid and one for Mythic Plus, which will be the same gear for a while, but eventually I think item level ends up being king still.
I will say one thing that I am not a fan of about it is that it's not immediately obvious where those like breakpoints are. Right? I don't
Yeah,
know
that's
true.
when I have 226 and this thing that gives me 1.5% damage. At what point I'm going to have to go to a website or
Yeah.
sim my own stuff in order to truly know which one of these items is better. Whereas all of the rest of my gear, I like. Yes, I'm using the eye level number as a crutch, effectively, but it's a crutch that Blizzard has given us for
Sure.
a
Yeah.
decade now, right?
Mhm.
And now I have this thing where I don't actually know how to evaluate the difference between two like probably the 252s not, but a 239 uh domination socket gear and the 252 that I might get out of a vault. I have no idea to know how to know which of those is going to be better without using some sort of external tool, which I'm not a huge fan of.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sockets are the same way, right? And typically, what I see is with just standard sockets is that each class has basically like whatever their scaling is, and people figure out like this is the eye level that a socket gives you. It is 7 eye levels. Do your math. 7 eye levels. That's it. Or maybe it's 9 or 13 or whatever it is for the class scaling. And you can't do that with the domination sockets because, like John said, that 1.5% damage stacking up to however many times or whatever it is gigantic. You are probably going to wear that 239 item with that socket forever. But another one that gives you a shield, you're going to want the 252. And making that decision is going to be very difficult. And I agree that it's unclear, but I do like that you have those choices
Yeah.
and you have to balance that. I think that's good.
Yeah. Class Discords, Icy Vein, Wowhead. I haven't seen them yet, but eventually every playable spec, so sorry, Survival Hunters, but every playable spec will have somebody will have done the mathemagic to it and decided that yes, for you the 3 unholy set bonus is worth 16 item levels, these 3 best in slot unholy gems is worth 4.5 item levels, and then like Andrew's saying, you have to do that calculus in your head of okay, yeah, this checks out. This is 10 item levels upgrade, so I'm a net gain of 2 item levels if I ditch this gem.
Yeah, and you can like always go back to the best in slot list, like now that those are a thing again,
Yeah.
and see. Granted, those are geared for Mythic, but
Right. All right. Well, let's move on. Before we get into talking about the bosses, which I wanted to do kind of like boss by boss, do you guys have a most and least favorite fight? We've seen all of them. Out of the 10, we'll start with Rob and move down the list. Most favorite, least favorite.
My favorite is Terragru, and my least favorite is Painsmith.
I suspect this is going to be
should
echoed.
surprise no one.
Zeph, what do you think?
My favorite is Painsmith,
Ooh.
which it may not be 3 weeks from now, but for now it is. And my least favorite, I don't know, I like all the fights. Probably the Guardian of the first ones, just because there's nothing happening, right? It's just a target dummy and a lot of damage.
Yeah.
And it's just not that very interesting.
All right. Destiny, most least.
Well, I'm going to actually mirror Zeph's least because I don't enjoy that fight particularly. I think it's probably because I'm not a DPS, so it's not just a fun, free, like, throw all my stuff at it. But I don't know. It's not very engaging. And that's the filler boss for me. I think that one could go away and I'd be just fine. And I think my favorite is probably Sylvanas. I really like that fight. And I don't usually like fights that require lots of moving around and that are really long fights. But, I mean, the few times that we've seen it, I've really enjoyed it. So,
Yeah, it's a beautiful set piece. Andrew, most and least.
Most is Painsmith. I like
Nice.
that a lot. And then least is probably Face Scribe.
Yeah.
I love, as a mechanics fight, I think it's great, but I just dislike it from a player perspective. I would prefer if that fight didn't exist.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't remember which of the like talking head YouTube WoW personalities said it best, but I was watching somebody's like review of it, and they were talking about how the Guardian of the First Ones is the worst possible encounter, except that its ease of being defeated explains why there are no more First Ones. If that was the guy, if that was the guy who was supposed to keep him safe, yeah, they all did, because that is a lame fight. But yeah,
Yeah, I actually kind of liked Guardian. Like they just need. I think it's a letdown because it's not as much of a DPS check as people were hoping for. But
yeah.
as a DPS check fight, I think it's fine. I think it's probably just undertuned.
Yeah, I think it's fun for us as tanks. I don't know how fun like dodging lasers and running circles out is all the time, but like being in charge of not killing the raid, juggling that. Do we let him pulse one more time? Having to in heroic when we start actually doing the tank dance. Like I think that's a lot of fun tanking fight. I don't know how much fun it would be to DPS or heal though.
I guess that's fair. Let's ask this question again after we've seen them in heroic.
Yeah,
That's probably
100%. Yep. Yeah.
Did we hear Try's least favorite yet?
Oh, I love the Terragru. Going back to like our very first day in Torghast when that mean old sumbitch would just come lumbering down and just one shot you and like you're done. I hated that guy. So like just from the vindictive dickhead side of me, love murdering him. It's great. We talked about earlier being very thematic, like he disappears from the world and here's why, because I got to kill him. And then like also it's just, as a Guardian Druid, you can just basically solo tank the last 10% by yourself because you're the tankiest bear on Earth. That's fun. And I dislike the 9. We talked about it already. It was a squandered opportunity, and I don't mind it when someone wants to recycle one thing, whether it's a graphic or a mechanic or a gimmick or a name. That's fine. Like there are no new ideas under the sun. Everything is recycled from something. But this was a fight of just like there are 14 mechanics and 12 of them are borrowed from some other fight that we have done very recently in living memory. It seems very uninspired. So
I like it as an early boss, and I like the throw kitchen sink at it, and I like that it's not really like a road block or a speed bump or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But that does make it just pure filler loot pinata, and that's kind of crappy.
It is. Although great trinket.
Yeah.
All right. Are you guys ready to move into the boss breakdown? I want to talk about anything we learned for each boss, is something like a tip or a trick, an important learning, and then cover some of the more noteworthy raid items. Because there was some stuff that I don't think we've seen yet. Some of it is powerful, and some of it is just cool. Like there's a cool factor here to a lot of these items that like I wouldn't use it, but I want it. So starting with the Terragru, we learned that you don't have to kill all the trash on the platform, and I think that was my fault. I read that somewhere or watched that somewhere in the beta testing for the raid, and I thought it pulled all the trash that you didn't clear. So either I made that up in a fever dream, or that was never supposed to be that way. So you can save, if you haven't done this, you can save a lot of time. Just target the mini bosses that have the anima powers and avoid 15-20 minutes of trash pretty easily.
And
Also,
grab heroism for every single one of those mini bosses,
I was
except
gonna
for
say,
the first one.
Yep.
It's
Well, no,
not in
even
your
the
notes
first
here,
one.
but definitely heroism every single time. So if you want like 15 minutes of pure 30% haste, show up to raid on time, because we're gonna heroism a lot in that 15 minutes.
Yep.
Yep.
100%. We had our first kill was perfect because we had like superhero Cole kite that Terragru for, I mean, it had, I don't know, I exaggerate because it was exciting, but it had to be 20-30 seconds minimum. So I like our second kill better, but I feel like every guild should invest heavily in one person who's good at kiting. Whoever can get aggro and run that Terragru around, that was priceless, and I think that's, looking at like heroic and the damage, I think that's the way it's designed to be handled. So we'll have our immune tanks, like Andrew and I will each pop all of our cooldowns at the same time, take 2 hits and die, but then it's going to fall down to the paladins to bubble taunt, and I think a rogue can probably whatchamacallit, where they're 100% dodge.
Yeah.
Warriors have something similar, but like we'll have to alternate all of those things. But then at the end of the day, there will still be hit points, and he'll still have to kill someone. And I not just because I'm a druid, but I think druids probably bear taunt and then just shift into soul shape, shift into cat, and run him around that room all day long seems to be super awesome.
I like it as you can brute force this if you want, or you can look at your toolkits and come up with some interesting ideas and maybe learn something about your classes.
Sure.
And something like the Resurrect Totem from Shamans. We've got 2 of those, so we can rotate through that easily enough because exactly when the tanks are going to die. So
100%.
we can use those tricks. Warrior Taunt and Parry works.
Yep. We learned not to ever take lumbering form. Again, we will at some point go back and have a run where we do the asinine talents, but that was a team killer ability for sure.
Ginormica.
Codename Ginormica.
Did anyone else notice what happened with that the last fight?
No.
Did you guys notice that someone did take it?
I did, but I wasn't. They were taking care of themselves, so I wasn't.
I really didn't.
I was so proud of them. I'm gonna say it. Zados took it.
Did he really? He might not have known. He wasn't with us when.
He knew. He knew. That son
I
of a
saw
bitch.
as soon as the fight started that he just grew up massive in size, and I just muted myself and started cursing because I was just oh, he's gonna murder us all. And then the entire fight, he was the perfect little angel. He stood out to the side. He sacrificed his own DPS to do it, and we had to stack in the little light zones. He would be in the farthest little corner, and it was just some little demon on one shoulder told him take it, do it. And then the other angel was just maybe don't murder everyone.
Nice.
So proud of
I wonder
him.
if he also got the 90% reduced AE damage where he could just stay out.
He may have. He was standing in the little he was doing supposed to and standing in the lit up part. I mean, just the furthest little corner.
We'll be watching.
That's when I noticed. I was like, why is someone saying? Oh.
Then you see who it is and.
Yep.
It's I guess I'll move my healing rain to make sure I get that little corner. It's fine.
Yep. We learned
funny.
Mystic Hands is not worth taking. When you have hunters and druids, the chance to remove the enrage effect power is never going to get a chance to remove anything because I'm going to enrage it the second that it's cast. So do not ever take Mystic Hands. It is a complete waste of your time and energy. And then, for the good powers, Ever Beating Heart, if you're a role player and you want to volunteer to be helpful, that completely excludes us needing to try to rotate class-based immunities, and you just stand between the Terragru and the Skull, and you help us win the fight. And then what I noticed, I don't know if we didn't have it at all on the first one, or if it's limited to a certain number of people, but I noticed the Satchel of the Hunt power, the second kill, that movement speed is huge. It's in the running between void zones, when we didn't have a roar, we were still moving very, very fast. I had to go back and figure out what was causing it. It's a 30 or 40% movement buff. If you're
when I saw that one show up on my list of 3, I was absolutely yes.
Yes, 100% yes.
Holy crap.
So I don't know whether...
I don't know how often it comes up. Maybe it's just one person.
You
might want to flag that and be keep an eye out for this.
That's why I made a note of it, because I want to make sure we take at least one person takes it, because I don't remember having that the first time. And especially if we're doing a kiting strategy at the end, that's huge. So invaluable.
Yeah, that the damage taken reduction stuff, it doesn't say it gives you DPS, but what it does is it allows you to stand there and turret the entire fight and not move around.
Yep.
And I think the DPS gain while we're doing the dance to light side, that's a lot of damage DPS. You should take less damage powers.
It can't. It will never backfire.
Take less damage powers, just in general.
Yep.
If you get anything you do to avoid damage, I appreciate.
Yep. Well, I don't want to harp on it, and this is not a raid strategy kind of session, but anytime, if it helps you survive, that helps you do more damage, because dead DPS do no damage. And if we're in a spot where there's nothing to heal, then all of my healers get to do damage, and that is also a DPS increase. So you can be a superhero by taking no damage. Not only do you get to keep doing DPS, but you also freed up 10 seconds of healer time where they can throw a couple of smites or a couple of lightning bolts, and you'd be amazed at how much that adds up over the course of a 7-minute fight.
Do you know how many buttons I have to push simultaneously to cast lightning bolt during a raid?
3?
It's 3. But it's I never possibly want to. seconds. Or
no.
push.
All right. I guess we'll move on to I, unless somebody else has anything that we learned on the Terror Grid that's worth sharing for people who may be trying it for the first time or just reminding ourselves for next week.
Get revenge. Kill it dead.
Kill it dead. I had the Jailer. So my shortcut here is to try to pre-assign the groups. I think maybe I let Andrew just pull trash after that, and I just try to move those groups between combat quickly rather than like getting there and forgetting, oh right, we have a split group this time. It doesn't need to be perfect. Even in Heroic, it doesn't need to be perfect, pretty close. I will tell...
You need to have at least one tank go to the other
side.
side.
Right. I will tell every earlier. It doesn't matter because half the people won't remember what group they are, and the other half won't know their left from their right. So, like, it's a best practice, but your mileage may vary. And we also learned that like any class that has a teleport, so Warlock Portal, Mage Blink, Soul Shape, I'm sure I'm forgetting one. I think Door of Shadows even works. Will get you through that meme beam that sweeps the platform on the eye. But we also had people screw it up or trigger it at the wrong time, or there's just enough server lag where it kills you anyway. I would almost tell people just do the mechanic the intended way, run to the chain, jump across. Because if you die, you do no damage. And I feel like the very marginal gain of saving, 10 to 12 seconds of DPS uptime by blinking through it is great, but if you die, then you do no damage the rest of that fight, or we have to burn our only battle res, because it's a pretty short fight, on you. I guess that's one of those things, my advice to our raiders specifically, or to anybody else would be, you watch Echo does it. Cool, that's amazing. Those guys are world-class raiders. I don't know how to break it to you. You are not. Which applies to like 80 to 90% of the people we play with. There are a few people in our roster that could easily leave our humble house and go raid Mythic. Zep's flexing because he knows it's him. But like, for the most part, sometimes shortcuts aren't shortcuts, I guess is all that I'm saying. We're using Windrush Hood and we're using Roar to try to get to those chains faster. You get a melee swing on the vault over, and that's, I don't want to say idiot-proof, but far more foolproof than I'm going to wait for the last second and then, oh shit, there's not a Warlock Gateway. Whoopsie. I guess I just die in the meme beam. So, like, I don't know. I think if you practice it and you want to be that min-maxer, just be aware that it doesn't always work or that there can be hitches in your giddy-up, but I think doing the mechanics is sometimes just simpler.
Yeah, there's no
high
reason...
risk, high reward isn't always our speed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like if there was a super, super tight DPS check where those global cooldowns actually mattered, maybe we would start looking at doing something fancy. But there's no, like, yeah, it's just pure risk. Why would you make a decision to cause everybody else, 24 other people, to run back for 5 minutes because you wanted to blink across a mechanic and you failed at it?
Yep.
Like, why? So...
All right, and then on the upside, though, the Titanic Ocular Gland is a trinket that drops off Eye of the Jailer, and it seems to be simming quite well for a number of specs. So, if you are a class that does not need that, then do your raid a favor and make sure you can trade it. I think that's going to be one of those trinkets that we end up, like, I don't want to say farming because that's kind of hard to do, but that's going to be one of those highly sought after tradable trinkets. So if anytime you can get a high idle trinket, make sure you put it in both slots. And if you can change your spec, if you don't need anything else off Eye of the Jailer, put it on a spec that'll roll that gland, because it seems pretty bonkers.
I hate this thing. I read it every time I read it. I spend a lot of my time less than 50% health.
It is so on the heels of the risk reward conversation. This is on the extreme end of risk reward. It doesn't, if you're healthy, so when you're prosperous, you're going to be very prosperous, and if you make a mistake, you're going to be extra punished. But in those situations where there's not a lot of AoE damage happening, or we really, really need that extra push of DPS, it's simming quite well for a number of specs. And it's a very approachable boss, so...
I would like to encourage everyone, whoever considers putting that trinket on, whether they can hear the sound of my voice or not, to look at past logs and see what their hit points was like when it was like for a fight, what it is for the average of a fight, and compare their damage taken with that of their DPS peers. Not that every fight is equal with it. Like some fights are really punishing for range or melee and vice versa. So maybe compare the amount of damage you took if you're a caster to that of another caster, and then decide, should I wear that trinket? Most of the time when I've seen like it sims, like is often the case with sims these days, it's simmed on like a best case situation. And that is very rarely the realities of it, and it is like very rarely our realities of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like ICD. Like if you can get the stat boost, it's best in slot for everybody. But the reality is, for your average player, every single time you press that trinket, you don't get the stat boost, and then it's literally the worst thing that you could put on your character. So you have to be aware of the mechanics, how it works, and how you play, and make a decision on whether or not it's worth.
I also read an interesting observation on, I want to say it was Questionably Epic, who observed that you may have to play more defensively than you would like to make sure that your health is always above 50%, but he was saying that it is better than most of the other trinkets in that category, but if you have to start planning defensive cooldown use or special movements or DPS downtime to not take damage, those are all lost opportunities where another just raw stat trinket might end up outscaling it because of how practically applicable it is. Because like Rob's saying, if you dip below 50% 4 times during that fight, it already probably wasn't worth equipping. But if you dip 4 times and you have to take special countermeasures to make sure you don't go below 50, then the trinket may be worth more.
Now, I will say, if you are a DPS that is interested in getting better, this thing will likely be a catalyst to do that, right?
For sure.
Because if you're thinking, I need to stay above 50% health to maximize my DPS because that's the thing you care about, then you, like, suddenly it's important to make sure you're staying in the right spot, you're not taking extra damage, and the 1 or 2 global cooldowns to blow a shield or a defensive or whatever it's like those negative returns are going to be over the course of like dozens and dozens of gold. Like if you're staying there casting regrowth on yourself, that's not how you maximize your DPS with this trinket. But if you're positioned correctly and you're not taking extra damage and this is a catalyst to help you maximize your DPS by taking less damage, I am all for that. You just have to be cognizant when you're wearing this that is going to make a difference.
Yeah. I see it as like a set piece. There are going to be Mythic Plus weeks where there's just a lot of tank damage and there's very little, splashy party-wide damage, and that's probably a good week to have this in your pocket and just say, yeah, I'm going to be at full health for 99% of this dungeon, then that's just free upside. So get it, play with it. We'll move on, I think. The 9, everybody's favorite fight, right? The only thing that I liked that we did was setting up that rally point for Fragments of Destiny and then moving it every so often, creating just a very visible, very clear space to create that rally point for the dispels. I feel like everything else here is just do the opposite of what the game is trying to force you to do, and that is literally how you could summarize the entire raid fight. So I don't feel like there's a lot of learning here.
Yeah, like that's the one mechanic from my experience with the fight.
Yeah.
And I'm a little worried about that mechanic personally, because I feel like we've been sort of getting lucky as the healing team, that because we're not coordinated at all. We all just see them in the right spot and all of us just fire a bunch of dispels and we happen to hit the 3 of them, right? Or it's a mass dispel or whatever. And eventually I feel like we're going to screw this up and leave someone like all of us are going to burn a dispel and only get 2 of them.
It's possible. I tried to micromanage it, but the first 2 times you guys were just killing it all on your own, and sometimes my best leadership is hands off. If it's already working, I don't need to get involved. But yeah, you're right.
I always want very fast, efficient dispels in all circumstances.
In all
circumstances.
Always.
Because we can deliver that.
Malevolence be damned.
But yeah, that's something I'm going to be paying attention to more, especially as we push into heroic, is if that becomes a challenge, because we are just sort of shooting from the hip. We all have very good instincts. We all have, I literally will look at the 3 people and go, I'm pretty sure Destiny will dispel this person, and Rob will dispel this person, so I'm going to get this one. But eventually that's not going to work, and we may need to get a little more coordinated around that one.
Yeah, but when we do kill it, great trinkets off of this boss. The Scrawled Word of Recall, the healer trinket. I don't know how well that works for you guys, but it's a right click on a 60-second cooldown that removes 7 seconds off of a healing cooldown ability. Like, that seems potentially very broken to me. I just think it would be fun to play with. And then the tanking trinket that Andrew traded me it is redonkulous. It is a ton of absorb and a significant amount of damage, especially in keys, but even in a single target scenario like raiding, a great tanking trinket. And then if those two trinkets weren't enough, we also have Jotungar, the Destiny's Call pole arm. It has a right click that, I haven't seen it, but I assume you summon Valkyries to your aid and gives you a very nice stat boost, a significant boost in secondary stats. That's a lot of fun items off of one boss. And I don't think we've seen the pole arm yet.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Because I don't know what you're talking about.
I just googled this trinket, and holy crap, I get a discount, or I get less cooldown on Riptide. I'll take that over and over and over again. Inject it right into my veins, except I have to use it.
Right.
Which means I have like a 5-second window at any given point in the fight to jam this thing, or I'm not getting full value out of it. And I'm reading comments, and it's like, just put it on the button as a macro so that you will always hit it.
Yep.
But except that I'm going to use it when my ability is not on cooldown, at which point making it not do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
No,
I think it's neat, but I don't. Yeah.
Put it in the macro after you cast the spell. So you cast Riptide, cast the trinket.
Use trinket. Yep.
It'll reduce the Riptide.
See, this is why you guys are in charge.
But it'll probably also hit your cooldown, your major cooldown. So your odds of getting it would be interesting. I don't know how it works.
I think it's only one spell per class. So Renewing Mist for Monk, Swiftmend for Druid, Penance for Discipline, Circle of Healing for Holy Priests, Holy Shock for Paladin, and Riptide for Shaman. It doesn't affect anything else.
It seems
That's
really
huge,
good for Shaman and for Paladin especially, but even the Renewing Mist for the Mistweaver, it just seems like, every 5 or 6 times a fight I get an extra cast for nothing but a global. That seems really good to me, but I don't know. Anybody else have any thoughts on the 9? We talked great items, and we talked a little bit about the Dispel. The heroic changes aren't enough to warrant, I think, a significant change in our strategies, so if we're ready to move on, we'll move on. Remnant of Ner'zhul. The biggest learning, the thing that I'm proudest of us coming up with, is making sure that the only people who yeet souls off the edge are demon hunters or hunters. The ability to disengage and fly with demonic wings basically completely negates a bad malevolence. We don't have to worry about that timing nearly as much. If you didn't have a demon hunter in the raid, you have a warrior or somebody on the edge trying to yeet that spirit off, and if there's ever an overlap with malevolence, that's another thing we have to watch. And I just love the ability of having Fubarius step up and hand raise for early malevolence dispel.
I don't know why I raised my hand, but I want to change an answer earlier. This is my least favorite fight.
Oh, I see. But yeah, I think if you can, anytime you can just take something completely off of a raid leader's plate or something or something the tanks don't have to watch, that's how you clear those fights reliably, easily every week. And then just having Fubarius be the guy who just yeets it, and then half the time he does get knocked off the platform, but he's very happy disengaging backwards and flying back to the platform. It's his own little mini game, and we don't have to worry about that at all. That's not. Some guilds really have to micromanage that interaction, and we just do not care. If we bounce a Fubarius 20 yards off the platform, he's gonna make it back. He's good. So that's fun. And then our biggest, I think, learning was trying to move the whole raid towards that malevolence target, just to give us that extra 10 yards of cushion. If everybody's smart and stays exactly at the center, and all the malevolence targets go to the far edge, I think you're always going to be fine. But playing to just that herd mentality, if we can round everybody up and move them 10 yards towards that malevolence, that just works so much better for us, and I have to assume for everybody.
The next trick is going to be to get people to pre-stack so that as soon as the malevolence gets there, you could dispel it.
Yeah. And the Remnant of Ner'zhul drops the Shadowed Orb of Torment, which seems to only really be good for mastery-based casters. I know it's simming really high for balanced druids, but I can't think of anybody else who would really want that. So probably a low priority item that you can pick up off-spec pretty early on in the raid progression. Anybody else have thoughts for the Remnant of Ner'zhul?
barely more than a trash fight for me with nothing good for loot. So
Yep. I don't want to pick on anybody. This isn't a targeted statement, but like one learning that I didn't include here is just training yourselves as healers to not instantly dispel, because 99% of the time I'm yelling at you guys to dispel faster, to dispel more, to dispel all the things, and this is one of those fights where you have to it is muscle memory. You have to fight that inherent that's a magic debuff. I got this.
I might be saying some things about myself that I shouldn't, but do they still have mods where it just looks at who has a debuff and you just have a button and it presses your cleanse on those targets?
If it does, I don't know about it.
Because I was gonna say that if those still exist, this fight is just delicious to punish those people.
That would be amazing. I got it. Oh. All right, moving on to Soul Render Dormazane. Our two big takeaways here from my memory were creating that demonic gateway at maximum range from where the chains spawn to maximum demonic gateway range is the 40 yards you need to snap those chains. So if you've got a warlock in the party and he sets it up well, you can basically instantly snap those chains on demand, rather than having to worry about runtime, which means it's a lot easier for us to call out, especially if we've got people already in sort of, in that melee tight cluster. And we learned that putting down raid markers in the narrow sections of those pizza slices made it far more visible for everybody else. I had initially done them, I think, on the outer edges or no markers at all. But it's just so hard to see because it's basically always coming in from behind the melee. So unless you're playing with camera over your shoulder, it's super awkward. So I liked our pivot to putting the raid markers at that central of the spoke there and being able to call safe colors.
And Zeph, was it you that was having trouble seeing it before this last Wednesday? Is it easier for you now? Did you figure out what you're looking at?
Yeah, I always could tell, but it was halfway through. It's very obvious on the floor. Some of them are getting covered by red stuff, but it was I was hearing the call 4 seconds before I saw any visual indication that something was happening, and that's what I was somehow what's happening and I don't know why. And usually it's because I'm not paying enough attention, and I accept that. But this one felt like I should call it out because other people may also not, because if it's not that obvious for sure. Other people.
And what works for you now to see it?
I listened to Try, but I wanted to know for my own personal, in case Try gets hit by a bus or whatever, and someone else may have to pay attention and call this out. I wanted to know what it was.
Nice.
In Painsmith Raznell, I think Soul Render's pretty much a done and dusted fight, so I'm going to skip ahead. I really liked... I think Zeph may have started it with Windrush Totem, but I really like using movement CDs during the spike maze in the intermission phase. It seems stupid. Every time we have these super, super simple mechanics that are extreme death if you get them wrong, I don't know if it's because it's so simplistic, we get overconfident, but it's there are 12 squares on the ground, one of them is free, 11 of them are death. And everybody's that's so easy, I got this. Oh shit, I died. Whoops, I stood in it. Oh god, I died again. And it's it seems so simple, but I think just being able to move quickly back to the center of that platform and then, being able to strafe left or right quickly is a godsend. So alternating, saving all our movement cooldowns, rush and totem for those moments, that was a big game changer for us. We stopped people getting clipped by fire too, because you can move fast enough that you can wait a second with fire swirling, starting to build your feet, and then move last second.
Well, and normally you drop a Windrush Totem and you get one shot at it, right? Because we're going to go somewhere very far away. But this is one where you actually get the full duration of the Windrush Totem. You drop it right in the center, and everyone is running through it over and over and over again. And that's true for
it is so cool.
The Shield Totem that we get that I harped on so much around Denathrius, I don't know what it's called, Stone something Totem. The healing circles for us and for druids, just put everything in the center there, because the entire raid is going to run through that spot 17 times before the end of the phase.
That is pretty cool. Another, I think, thing that we learned: save your blinks. There are many mages. I'm bad at it with Soul Shape, but sometimes those are just convenience abilities, right? I would rather just be over here 2 seconds faster. But the ability to skip spikes or skip a bad spike balls, especially if you have those chains, is so priceless in the Painsmith fight that I think I would argue that you should never use a blink unless you're, deliberately counteracting one of those mechanics, because it is so clutch. Like I've watched Trollin do it a few times where he has the chains and he'll just go to the extreme side of the room, wait for that spike ball, and then just blink through it to the other side. So he doesn't even put himself in the position where he's going to bottleneck and potentially knock somebody up in the air while we're crossing through that one little gap. And so it's always so nice to watch, somebody with Dora Shadows or Soul Shape or Warlock Gateway or Teleport or Blink rather, to just sit on those cooldowns and know that this can be game breaking here. I'm just going to not use it for convenience. Don't be a lazy mage, I guess is the takeaway. And then there is another cool item here. I have to assume it's not specifically rogues only, but there's an agility fist weapon called the Cruciform Vein Ripper that stacks a bleed effect. It's very roguish in class fantasy, and it looks pretty badass. But again, I don't think we've seen that. So that's a fun thing to look forward to. I don't remember if druids can wear fist weapons. I know monks can. So
Legion artifacts were fist weapons, so I assume.
Oh yeah,
they
yeah.
still wear them.
I want it.
Yeah, this just has Enhancement Shaman written all over it.
Yeah,
I
it's
want to
just
Storm Strike and just punch as many times as possible with my one weapon over and over and over again.
while being behind a target or if that target is slowed for bonus effects. Like it is very rogue class fantasy. It's like my demon hunter has always felt a bit like a rogue. Well, now you can be.
Druids are not on the, according to Wowhead,
No.
Druids are not on the list of people who can get this item to drop. Outlaw Rogue, Enhancement Shaman, the non-healer monk specs, and the 2 demon hunter specs can drop this item.
Nice.
But try once.
I do. Come on, guys. Come on, bud.
Maybe I can trade it to you.
Nice. That's how I'm getting gear.
It's true.
Guardian of the first ones.
Wait, what are you doing with a one-handed agility weapon on a druid?
We
Cosplay?
were 2 of them.
You wear 2 of them.
Oh man. Guardian of the first ones, we learned on normal that one tank with a small cooldown can take both Sunders, and we kind of like that just for keeping it simple until we got to do the Sunder Obliterate, I Taunt Obliterate Sunder dance. And then we talked about this earlier, so I won't berate the point, but using those explosion casts to buy us extra time is super, super cool in the you have a certain amount of time to kill this enraged boss. Allowing him to cast once and moving him in is great. You can, with a healing cooldown, get a second one. I like to imagine that with a good raid-wide DR, we can maybe even take a third. That's just fun to play with. So definitely always let him cast once, not just because it clears the sentries, but because that's 6 seconds you can have at the end of the fight, paying it forward. No interesting gear there, and that's a pretty straightforward fight, unless I'm forgetting some innovation that we discovered, but I can't think of anything.
Similar to the knowing where the things are. So what is it about this, like taking extra pulses that is buying us time? Is it that there's like a set amount of time that he's going to spend in that orbit, in that circle every time?
Yeah.
And the longer that we can delay that, the
Exactly
more time
that.
we'll have ultimately. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, as long as he's at 0 energy, he'll keep trying to cast that Wipe Us spell. And then whenever he dips inside that circle, the energy conduit recharges his energy to full. So the enrage timer is how quickly can he, pee through all of that energy and be at 0 and try to cast his Doomsday effect again. So as long as we let him cast 1 or 2 of those Doomsday effects before we give him energy back, we're essentially just delaying the inevitable.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Fate Scribe Rokalo. We talked again a little bit about this earlier, but this is the Mechatork fight. This is the communication boss. Especially
it's gonna be hard.
Especially moving into heroic, it is literally all about communication. You guys have seen the mechanics. It is kill the ads, kill the boss, don't stand in it. Like that is bog standard for every raider for the last 15 years. The only difficult wrinkle is that you have to be able to communicate with people about where they need to stand, where you're going to be, whether you need a second person to make it go counterclockwise. That's just huge. And I think we have a framework of the first person on scene determines which direction it needs to go. And if it needs to go 2-person direction, they call for a friend. That responder says, I'm going to blue, I'm going to green, etc. That way we don't end up with 3 people responding to the same crisis. I cannot tell you that we've executed it perfectly yet, But I think we're building there, and I think trying to train everybody in normal for what will be their heroic strategy has been very helpful. I think we'll spend less time on Fate Scribe moving forward into heroic, but that is the length and breadth of it. It's just getting everybody comfortable with the idea of following that rune as it spins around the thing, and that as it moves, you're going to have to move with it and stay on top of that rune and lock it into its socket. And I hate to say it, because I say it all the time when we get to these, it is do the mechanics, and we win. And people will roll their eyes at me, and people will get upset with me, and they'll try to out-DPS it, and it is not that. It is not a DPS fight, it is a mechanics fight. And eventually, I'll get the 3 or 4 DPS who whisper me, I am fucking done with this fight, I hate it, I'll do all of the mechanics. To which I just, yep, you go get them. Yeah.
Thank you. That's what we've been asking you to do the whole time.
You take it and run, bud. You fuck those mechanics up. He's earned it, yeah. And I don't know, it's a very human feeling, like, you know what, fine, I'm so mad, I'm gonna do it right.
Okay.
They grew up so fast.
Yeah.
And then, I haven't seen it yet, and I don't think Andrew has either, but the Weaved of Warped Fates looks interesting. I don't know if it's gonna be better than a good Absorb Shield, but a Cheat Death Trinket seems really good. And I want it, because I already have kind of a cheaty death with my pod, and I want to.
Kind of depends if it still has some of like the limits on that we've seen in the past, where it's sort of like it saves you from hits that would normally kill you up until this point, and then it decides, well, dead is dead.
Yeah, like no.
He does say if a hit more than like 40k damage will still kill you.
Yeah, it's just for like boss
just
autos.
like a little oopsie whoopsie, but we can't actually use it to like change mechanics or change how we would approach fights in the way that I would wish we could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it won't be an invulnerability bubble. It won't be a last resort, but it will be, I think, a nice one to have in keys. And I know that it's kind of blurring the line between raid versus keystone methodology, but there are times where I'm tanking and it's just the healer got a little bit behind and I just happen to be out of cooldowns at that moment and I just take 4 autos for 30,000 and that's all that I had. Where this
I had a lava surge proc and I really needed to.
Right, exactly. This erases that one mistake. Yeah, I can't use it to solo a boss and I can't change a mechanic, but it does every 6 minutes give me an oopsie. And sometimes that's very important.
Yeah, I've never really played with the cheat death stuff. I've always gone for either like a big shield and DPS trinket to try to kill packs faster, or like now with two huge shield trinkets. I don't know. I don't know how much of an impact it would have. I have to play around with it. I did get the cheat death trinket at Anathria, but I never really used it.
I never got it. Yeah, I'm running 2 shields right now too, just because they're survivability and basically DPS trinkets. That's crazy good.
Yeah.
And like the cheat death trinkets don't have a lot of super important use for a monk and to a lesser extent a druid. Like if you slap that on a death knight whose hit points is always going up and down like crazy, I would have a lot more value to it. Or for tanks that have like less of a large hit points pool than a druid, but
that's fair. Your mileage may vary.
That's an us problem.
One thing I want to touch on before we move on from this boss. I know I personally still have a hard time knowing what color is what ring, especially if I'm on the other side, right? Like I don't have it in my head yet that like blue is the second one and green is the third. That's not the right answers. Please don't.
Yeah.
I said the right thing. But I don't I don't know if I've got to like write it on a notepad and put it on another monitor, put it on a sticky note, slap it on the wall. Like I got to figure some way of knowing, of putting in my head translation of color to ring count
position,
so that I can, when I'm on the other side and all the colors are and all the markers are where we were fighting, I still know this one's green and that's the person who needs help, as opposed to me. What I have been doing is running around. Someone says I need help and I run out to the other side and then I like look around and go, okay, which one of these has the rune that's like too far away, so I know who's looking for help. And by the time I've done that, someone else has got there and is helping them. So go ahead. Sorry.
What I'm hoping happens, and if not, maybe we can even find a way to make this ourselves. I'm hoping that there's either DBM or some kind of second-party add-on will mark the players who have been given the ability to interact with the ring with raid markers, because that would make our lives a lot easier. I'm just putting the ring markers down so that there's some point of reference, but I agree it is very bad. But if I don't, we haven't seen it in Heroic, but if those players each get like DBM marked with the 6 raid markers, that solves a lot of the problem, because you can see both the player and then we can call rings based on where those players are standing, which might be better because they'll already be on the or near the sigil that needs to be kited anyway. So I'm hopeful in that even if it doesn't happen, 3 DBM, somebody will do a weak aura, somebody will do some kind of marking tool, I suspect, that we may have to look at if this becomes a burden. I don't want to have to do it manually each time because that's a lot of clicking and button pressing, but yeah, I'm hoping that if we get stuck, I bet you there will be an add-on style solution.
It'd be really nice if the world markers had number options, so we could just mark them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Or even just anchor them so that they move with the ring. I don't know.
The one interesting thing is that the sockets are always in the same place. So one of the things that I've seen is mark the sockets and not the ring, but that doesn't help you find the rune.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I think either way, there'll be something for us to learn on either way. I don't want to take up too much time, so we'll move on to Kel'Thuzad. This is a mixed bag. If you are melee, I'm sure you hate my decision to do this. Everyone else appreciates your sacrifice. We've had a lot of success just sending all the melee down into the phylactery, stacking on one marked player. When that marked player moves, everybody moves with him. That way the whole world, except for one space, can be void zones of infinite death, and we hopefully don't lose anybody down there. I know, melee guys, that it really sucks down there, but imagine if you were all casters. Like there is time for a global between having to move. There aren't enough casters that can keep up with that. So I think it is the superior strategy, but I appreciate their sacrifice.
I haven't seen it in Heroic, but it's not that bad.
Yeah,
it's not that bad normal. Like if I can walk around and keep all of you alive, you can keep punching the boss while you're fighting whatever it is we're fighting down there. Like that, you got to move there. You have to move like every few seconds, but it's really not that bad.
Yeah, good then. No complaining. Melee DPS, as I've said so.
It's fun to watch. I never had to actually do it.
Yeah, we had the big brain breakthrough of immune soaking the Frost Blast, which I did not think to explicitly say as a raid leader, which apparently was a huge mistake. Anytime we have a soakable mechanic that lands on somebody with an invulnerability, that is like a gift. That person should definitely go out and die in a field by themselves. But I think on our second pull and third pull, that was a big change and a big breakthrough moment for us. We're like, oh shit, yeah, we have like 9 or 10 immunities in the raid. There's a good chance it is going to be on one of those guys more often than not, and that saved us a lot of damage, a lot of healing, and a lot of dispelling. And then lastly, just this fight more than most, don't die. Because Kel'Thuzad will raise you as a mind-controlled zombie, and then that's just more DPS time we have to spend killing you again. It's also one of those fights where I think I tend to want to just use battle reses as soon as somebody dies, just because we were going kind of all in on every attempt, and then we don't have to worry about having a mind-controlled zombie version of you to kill.
Oh, but we did also learn, though, if we need to reset, if there's a bad pull, that if you're mind controlled, you don't die. If there isn't any enemies, then the fight just resets. So
yes,
you can also do that. Everybody get mind controlled.
RTM elite strats right out of the gate. One person die on purpose. You are the soft reset.
Make sure you have a res.
And then 2 very cool items off of Kel'Thuzad. Jaethys, the Prison Blade. That is the weapon that has a right-click to eat other weapons, which apparently will give you a proc based on the strength of other weapons you have fed to it, at the penalty of decreasing the secondary stats on the weapon. So I think it's let's say it's haste versed. As you feed it weapons, it will give you a more powerful proccing effect, but reduce the haste and versatility on the weapon for each time you feed it something. Just the uniqueness of that alone, I wish I was a sword class. Like, that is so cool to just have a magic item that eats other magic items. And there's been a lot of theory crafting already. There are some specs who will probably just want it as is and not mess with the proc, but there are just as many other classes and specs that are going to want to feed this to its capacity for that giant proc. If you're a class that can, wait to soak all of your damage into a small window, like your classic arms warrior type scenario, then you're going to want to feed this guy every purple you can find. And then the Devouring Cold is a super fun weapon. It is, I think, pretty much a garbage weapon, except it has an equip right click that will allow you to display the sword as either strapped to your back or sheathed at your waist. And it's just kind of fun.
I look forward to that becoming like a thing with every weapon in an expansion or two. And I really hope where that's going to go.
It could be like a tech experiment.
Yeah, and like as soon as I saw like, oh, that's fantastic, and it's sort of like the first time you ever saw like a flight path, and it was like, well, on the flight path, this is amazing. Hey, can I fly where I want? Well, no, of course not.
Yeah.
And I said like, oh, this is amazing, and every weapon can do it now, right?
Yep. Yeah, I agree that it seems to me like they're testing the waters for that kind of thing. What Dex is saying in chat is true. The feeding the weapon to the Prison Blade is a permanent effect. So if somewhere down the road you decide you would much rather have had the secondary stats than the proc, there is nothing you can do about that. You have to get a new sword if you want just the secondary stats and not the proc.
Yeah, I think it's like almost another like tech demo experiment where there's two weapons, right? Where let's play with different upgrade flows for a weapon. This one is, hey, you get another purple weapon and you can feed it to this other one and upgrade it over time. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sylvanas' thing that I'm sure you're going to talk about right now.
Yep. Yeah. So let's just jump into Sylvanas. We learned a lot. We learned that the tank explosion is the slowest run-out explosion ever because Bear Tribird, can make it to the edge of the arena before I explode. So that will likely be changed, I have to imagine, at some point. But we learned our Phase 3 puddle management is going to be very key to that success. We talked a little bit about it before. We'll talk more about it tonight, so I don't want to harp too much on that. We need to make sure we have probably a reliable interrupter in Phase 2 to get Sylvanas' cast, someone who understands to wait until the last possible second, but ideally probably somebody with a good long 30 or 40-yard range interrupt. We have to practice organizing ourselves a little bit to clear that debuff with the arrows that rain down, while also not being drawn all the way to the arrow, because the heroic change is that if you hit the arrows, you die. So you have to voluntarily tether yourself to the arrow to clear your debuff, but then you can't let the arrow touch you because you die. And I feel like it's a stupid thing, it's a simple thing, but we'll have a couple of like silly deaths of like, oh shit, I wasn't paying attention. So we need to get better at that. And then like organizing ourselves in such a way, there were two people standing on the same arrow spawn. The arrow is only going to clear one of you. So like if there are two of you standing next to one swirly, one of you is going to be very sad. So maybe just find your own swirly. There's plenty of them going out. And then hero early and often. It's a 13-minute fight, 14-minute fight, best case scenario, so you're going to get two heroes. Definitely do one on the pole, and then do one later as soon as she transitions into that last phase for the big final push. She has amazing items. I think we'll go from least cool to most cool. The Dark Ranger's Quiver. A cosmetic quiver that's never going to be wasted on hunters. Apparently it's transmoggable by non-hunters as well, but the effect is only exclusive to hunters, so that would be kind of fun to be a... I'd love to be my, like, simian bear form wearing a quiver. That would be just the best day ever. But it does also have, if you're a hunter, the ability to fire something called Withering Fire, like every 10 shots you make. Just extra damage, and I can't help but think of it as like the little missiles from Mandalorian. I hope there's some cool graphic or sound effect that goes with it. So that's really neat. The Edge of Night.
What's the cool equivalent item that survival gets for this?
Right?
Clearly,
Yeah.
Survival is a viable hunter spec that everyone wants to play.
I think they have to.
There
must be a legendary coming probably somewhere in the near future, just to remind people it's still a spec.
Do we get the fist? Do they use fist weapons? Maybe they can have that fist one.
Oh, maybe. No, I don't think they do actually.
Oh.
Whoopsie, oversight. They do get that. Maybe they can get the polearm though off of the 9, so they can call Valkyries.
Perfect.
Well, hunter-specific Valkyries. She also has daggers, the Edge of Night. They are the weapons that she used to dispatch Saurfang in the cinematic. So if you're like just a person who needs to have that specific transmog, whether she's your queen or you just like to have stuff from the movie, definitely probably very transmoggable. But also the stacking shadow dot damage looks really good. Like that, it seems like not a small amount of bonus damage. So I don't know who besides Rogue wants that, but I'm excited to see like if Lav gets them how much damage that little proc actually does, because it seems not insignificant.
I think it's Rogue specific because the proc
is
references
it?
combo points.
Yeah, that would be. Well, hey, feral druids have combo points, sir.
Can you hold
What
a
has
dagger?
combo points?
What's that?
Can you hold a dagger?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that class. Trav.
Yeah. They're right up there with survival hunters.
Feral Druid is actually doing really good this year.
And then, last but not least, everybody knows about it, the legendary bow. The super, super sweet orange bow. Looks badass. Is got an attached 1 minute cooldown AoE silence for God knows what reason. And because broken shit is broken, is upgradable with tokens that will take it all the way up to mythic item level. So, Yahoo for hunters.
Yeah,
And
we'll
we're
have
gonna
to-
see a lot of those, right?
Yes.
We'll have to see how that works because they changed how the weapon drops so that it'll drop at the item level. So I don't know if it still gets tokens or what.
Oh.
We'll have to see what that looks like.
Yeah, I still don't know what the like official drop rate is. If it's going to have more of a legendary style drop rate, or if it's just 10% like any weapon on her table. I feel like it can't possibly be that accessible, but we'll see.
Dax would like to add, don't haphazardly run off the created bridge. You'll die very efficiently
Yes,
in phase 2.
that is a true story. Whether it's stone or ice links, they have holes in them. You die. Yeah. All right. Moving into heroic, that's on our immediate horizon. I don't know if next week we want to try looking at like split runs, doing normal Wednesdays, heroic Sundays, depending on how tonight goes. But in our very near to immediate future, we're looking at some heroic progression. So normally my rule is I'd like to see the boss killed twice in normal before we try heroic. And if anybody's asking for the purposes of main swapping or bringing a character to the group, 226 seems like a good number. That's always kind of been how we've handled the normal to heroic transition, is somewhere around where the normal item level was going into heroic. Obviously, it's not a hard number. We tend to be very flexible people, especially if you're a skilled player, you're going to do a lot more with a 220 character and your skill level than somebody who has no idea how to play that class but is 230. Conversely, if you've done some raiding and you have like a full set of domination gems but you're only 220, you're going to do way more damage than someone who has none of those things but is at 227. So not a hard and fast rule, but just a goal, a landmark. People like a number, so that's the number. We wanted to talk a little bit about the fights with the most, like what fight is going to change the most from normal to heroic, and conversely, which one's going to change the least. I think, believe it or not, the one that changes the most, well, obviously it's Sylvanas, right? Like she adds 1 or 2 new mechanics for each of her 3 fights in a 16-minute encounter. Sure, that's a gimme. The final boss of a heroic tier is always going to be the most changes. I think but otherwise, I think it might actually be the Terragru. The Terragru introduces a series of like soaking mechanics that have to happen. They're going to channel various essences that he gets empowered by if someone is not soaking it, but soaking it does detrimental effects to the person soaking it as well as the party as a whole. So we end up sort of like that, do we just eat it as a raid here, or does one person have to die in this circle? I think it will take us a little bit of time to micromanage, and then it complicates every other part of that fight. Like everywhere we were using a healing cooldown before, we're probably going to have to stagger them. It just changes a lot. Like it used to be, I don't want to call it a tank and spank, but a fun, carefree-ish fight. And now there will be a lot more to micromanage and a lot more to watch. There'll be a lot of ways for you to accidentally kill the raid, where previously it was just don't take lumbering form and we should be fine. And then the Painsmith traps, I'm not looking forward to at all. Painsmith.
I think those are going to be easier than what you think they are.
Maybe, yeah.
The traps are I think the traps are going to be something that you don't actually pay attention to at all. You just you spread the traps out, you drop them, damage goes off sometime. Great.
It's a healer problem. We'll just heal through it.
That is true. Yeah, health is not my responsibility.
Yeah, especially
Don't
as
use
the fight.
the under 50% trinket in that fight.
Maybe not. Yeah.
Especially as phase 2 and phase 3, where because the traps will blow up when something hits it. So we have chains that are going to blow those traps up over time,
Yeah.
and we know exactly where those chains are going to hit, and we know exactly when they're going to hit. So I think it's actually, if we can coordinate a little bit, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, as long as we can stagger it more than 2 seconds or so we don't have that extra damage taken,
Yeah.
I agree with you. Just coordination, which, is our strong suit, so we should be fine.
Yeah, but it's healer coordination, so it's fine.
Yeah, and then the least changed fights. We have one gimme in the Remnant of Ner'zhul, which basically has no heroic changes at all, except that when you dispel malevolence, it leaves a pool that stays for the rest of combat. So we're already sending people to BFE where nobody's standing anyway, and now there's an extra special reason to not stand on the edge, which we were never standing on anyway. Like, that seems like a gimme boss. The 9 is also, they add a link essence ability where you're going to be tethered to another player or several other players, so whenever you take damage, everyone in your tether takes damage. So there will be some, like, if you are linked, you don't soak kind of situations, but other than that, that's pretty much a gimme fight. And then I want to see the Eye, because I want to tell you that the Eye has very little changes, except it's those Valkyries with the chains. And I feel like there's the potential for a couple of moments where they're going to get us. Like, where we're not going to be paying attention, and we're not going to have a movement cooldown, and only 3 people are going to...
someone.
Yeah, exactly.
No, they won't get us in those situations. It'll just be one person that's like,
Yep.
sorry, there you go.
I can see
Bye."
that. I can see that circle spawning, and everybody going, "I'm out!" And like just one guy gets stuck in that chain, and there is no life grip on Earth that's going to save him. So the small learning curve, but I think that'll be another easy fight for us. All right, I think we're winding down. Let's go into the last section. Does anybody have advice for people in the Sanctum of Domination, for our guild specifically? Any useful add-ons or in-game tools that are helpful to you that you would recommend to other players? I came up with, this is a good raid for extra jobs. There are so many like little things you can do to help the raid. It will help you skill up as a player. Don't be afraid. Like, there are guilds in the world that will berate you and make you feel small and stupid for making any mistake. We're the closest thing to a safe space I've ever seen. So this would be a great time for you to try something new. Like, literally just, I've never done this before, I want to try soaking the circle, or I want to try carrying the orb. In this raid specifically, there are tons of opportunities for someone to raise their hand and just say, I'll do it. And it really does. It makes you a better, more aware player. And then that's the snowball, right? It'll just it'll get better from there.
I think Dax wants to volunteer to not stand in the fire.
Oh, that'd be great, bud.
Was that what you were trying to say?
Some general advice.
Yep.
I'll try that too, Dex.
I will say that looking at your performance, especially week to week, and maybe looking at that, like what other classes or other specs and other raids are doing that are or other raids with your class and spec, and seeing how other people are handling this, especially still only a couple of weeks into content. That's how I learned the most about what's working and what's not working as a healer. I will look at what other Resto Shaman are doing. I'll pull up the log analyzer and I'll go look at what other Resto Shaman are doing at my eye level and my tier and go, oh, okay, so this person's casting Healing Rain more often than I am. Oh, because obviously there's a bunch of benefits to that. Or what is it that I'm doing? There are some tools that you can drop your log into and it will sort of do this calculation for you. None of those tools work very well for healers. And so, at least from the healer side, I sort of have to derive that information for myself. But it does mean that you can look and see, because those logs will tell you they cast the spell 48 times that fight. Mm-hmm. And if I cast it 22 times, clearly there's something I'm doing wrong. Or there's something, maybe they have a talent, or you can figure that out. But that is how I learn the most about my particular class, is by comparing it to what other people are actually doing and trying to figure out why they're making the decisions they're making, why they're using the spells and their cooldowns and stuff. And the new raid tiers are the best time to do that, because you're going to see a lot of people raiding, a lot of data out there that you can go and compare against to see what other people are doing and finding success with.
Yeah, and that sometimes leads to entire paradigm shifts in how we approach a fight. The Covenant of the Shivara, before we started stacking them, we couldn't figure out why cleave classes were parsing so high, and it was because there are several moments where they can easily just be stacked, close enough that the 10 or the 11 plus yard cleave classes like Balance Druid can actually hit both. And that was like huge, just free damage that we know they couldn't be close enough because they became invulnerable, but we didn't realize there was a sweet spot where some classes are cleaving at just over 10 yards, so as long as they were between 10 and 11 yards apart, we were getting free cleave damage from a number of different spellcasting classes. But yeah, sometimes you don't know that until you're doing that research that Zeph is talking about, where you're like, wait, why is this guy spec'd for Starfire, and why is it doing so much damage here? I have no idea. Maybe even watch that fight and then go, oh shit, I learned a thing.
One of the analyzer tools, I'm not sure which one, it does have one of the tabs will let you replay the fight based on the log. You could watch all the people move around, and you could watch them use their abilities. I thought when I discovered that, I sat and watched like an entire raid of ours because I was like, this is so cool. Wow, look at all Saul go.
Look, the little icon is me. Yeah, it's gross to watch it because sometimes you go like, oh, why am I over there? I shouldn't be over there. Don't be over there. Oh my god, what are you doing?
I mean, from my perspective, I always like, and what I harp to you about John most of the time is like, as a tank, just positioning.
Yep.
Where are we? Where do we need to be? But the same is true for DPS. Like, as we learn where we need to take the bosses, when we need to take the bosses there, that should become predictable over time. The mechanics are all predictable largely. If you think about positioning where you want to be, where you need to be, it's like that will just help you overall.
Yeah, I like that a lot about tanking with you, is watching our raid DPS increase between like the first and fourth pull, like first and fourth week, where we finally figured out how to minimize movement and maximize opportunity for everybody else. We also talked a little bit about having a warlock in the party, to the point that we even wanted to recruit one.
Oh, I'll take this one because
Please.
I harped on Try until he let me jump us into looking for a group and recruit a warlock, because as the saying goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder, and our warlock Void left a giant void in our raid group while he was doing fun family things, and I was so irritated that we didn't get this Sylvanas kill because the run back is so long. And then even if it's just like 2 or 3 people, you can't start the poll until everybody's there, and so if someone releases and doesn't wait for the res, or if somebody dies, then you have to wait for them to come back and you have no way to summon them. I was not doing that again. So he said the agreement that we had was if I was willing to get into looking for a group and try to find somebody a half an hour before, because he didn't want to waste his time doing it, that was fine. And so I did. And I found us Restlock, and he joined us, and now he's in the guild. And you know what? Have a warlock. Just have a warlock. And if you don't have one in your guild, make a new friend. Because this is not the raid that you want to not have a warlock.
It does seem that way. Yep. And repair bots, engineers.
Yep.
Because if we were doing those, getting a battle res out or doing warlock summons, you won't get a chance to walk past the NPC vendor that repairs gear. So being able to do that stuff, because there's no mounting, save outside once we get to Sylvanas. I think I haven't found a place to mount in there.
You
At the
can mount
beginning,
at
and
the
then
Guardians.
yeah,
right? In
I
that
think
area.
Oh, can you outside there? I didn't think about
I
that.
think
Yeah.
Mersul,
places
you
all
can
throughout.
too.
It's right before Painsmith where we had a few wipes, and right before Fate Scribe where we had wipes. And so those run backs are really annoying. So that's where using the battle res wipes so that way someone can get up and get a healer to bring everybody up so you don't have to do the run back is really helpful. Or yeah.
Nice. All right, round table then. Anybody else have any advice, thoughts, useful add-ons? Make the world a better
Specific
place.
to this raid, like it's all the same stuff that most raiders should know by now. Get some fun tools. I've kind of been dithering around with some stuff that's normally meant for like streamers to record their things to show other people, where that's really useful for just recording a raid and then watching back just for little me and only me to see like, hey, what the heck was I doing there? But I'm not saying that's necessarily something that everyone should do or that anyone else would want it.
Yeah, I use the standard Weekora packs, the tank Weekora and the main raid Weekora for abilities, which is basically like on Try's stream right now, the big boxes to the bottom right of his timers. Those are really useful. For me personally, I like when we go through heroic, I'll start trimming out timers on DBM because there's so many timers that like some of them are just automatic, some of them you have visual cues. You got to learn what's right for you. There's some stuff like as a tank that I need to be paying attention to more specifically, or that like I will take a specific call out that is maybe inconsistent or whatever, and take that off of Try's plate. Or some things about as we do these fights, like I'll do more positional stuff, Try does more generic call out stuff. We figure out as we drive through the fights where that lands, and like everybody should be doing that from a like figuring out what works best for you to learn the fight and learn the mechanics and do the mechanics.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of playing this game with you is you are so good at figuring out like specific timings for recurring events and where we need to be and how we need to be there, to a point that most of the raid doesn't need to even, like, everyone should, but like you're on top of like the second they can use second potions. Like I am vaguely aware, tangentially aware that at the 5-minute mark we can use potions again, but like I don't know whether you've got a stopwatch or you're running a timer on it, but literally at 5 minutes and 1 second, you're calling for second potions every time, and that makes a difference. Like it's bandwidth I don't have to spend, and it's maximizing our DPS raid wide. So yes, we're all very super appreciative that you're good at it, but also everybody else should be kind of aware of those things on their own. It's
just when his DPS cooled.
Yeah, right.
Back up.
Nice.
That's how he knows.
I can do this again. But that's getting better, is being able to watch all that stuff and look for those timing opportunities yourself rather than just doing what someone else is telling you to do. Yeah.
I like the puzzles. Like you find the things, like we talk about how it can be frustrating because we're doing 50 pulls on this boss and we're dying to the same mechanics or mistakes or whatever every time. For me, like I like the puzzle. I like trying to figure out what we can do differently, or if there's a better timing, or like Danny. I loved the Danny fight, the phase 2 of the Danny fight, because that was just a timing puzzle dance.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Getting down this is where we're at in DPS because we have a different comp. We have to change how we approach the ads or how we focus on. We have less ranged. Okay, I need to put the boss somewhere different. I love those types of things. I always use the Varamathras fight where we were 60 pulls into that boss before I learned how to actually tank it as a monk, and then it was just a completely different fight for me. It was super entertaining. I love those types of things in fights.
Yeah.
Fate Scribe is another one where like we still don't have the right answers on how we do the tank ads, and I love figuring that out and the timings and seeing the differences, because where those things are matter. Tank ad dies in the middle of the room, that's real bad because you have lines, you have the little spinny things. So learning that and adjusting, and that's what makes these fights interesting to me, because there's always something little that you can improve on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a game of inches for sure. Does anybody have any questions out in the audience?
There were not any when I put the call out. I think we've talked at everybody enough because we have to be back on for raid and.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, I did.
Just a little bit.
Less than 2 hours.
I need food.
I need to use the restroom.
Well, all right, guys. That's why you subscribe to this channel, for quality content. Now, if you hop on over to my OnlyFans, go to Zeph's bathroom cam.
For enough money, you can subscribe to the camera in my restroom. Yeah, for sure.
Do you have like a link you want to plug for someone else?
No.
Guild Star says no.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you to my officers for participating in this very long chat. I'm sorry that ran so long. And to guild members of RTM, tonight, less than 2 hours from now, we'll be doing Kel'Thuzad right into Sylvanas. I think there's no way we can't get it, guys. So bring your A game. We're going to Vantis Ruin right off the bat on Sylvanas. Yeah, eat your Wheaties, have a good lunch. dinner, and everybody just bring your best Raider A game.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you
you
next time.
guys.
Bye.